Good morning, students. Again, my name is Yuna Kario, and I am your tutor for the subject Learning, Development, and Learning for the course DPP and DJP. Okay, so this session is meant to help you with your preparation for the examination, the upcoming May-June examination. So let's go ahead and start. What you need for this module to prepare, you need your study guide. They are very important because your exams and your assignments are all based on your study guides and your assignments, of course. You also need your face-to-face sessions, which we are currently having now, and the IOL centers all over the country are there to help you and assist you with your preparation for the examination. And of course, the feedback on your assignments are as important as well. So please read them, and they should guide you in your preparation for the examinations. Let's start on with Unit 1. Unit 1 is about the stages of childhood development before the pre-primary stage. Okay, so in this question, in this unit, the question that I emphasized on was like introductory questions. I might call them like that. These are questions that just ask you to give simple definitions or simple discussions or short discussions. Please, you should always look at the marks allocated per question, and it should actually guide you on your answers, on how long your answer should be. Okay, so it says that questions that requires them to discuss, such as discuss the learning process and then elaborate more on the learning environment. You are required to write about the topic by giving information, ideas, opinions about that specific topic. For instance, in this case, we can say when discussing the concept of culture, how culture or how multiple cultures and single cultures influence people's learning abilities. Please try as much as possible to elaborate more on what culture itself is and what it is when you talk about multiple cultures, and what it is when you talk about single cultures, and how these two concepts of multiple culture and single culture are able to influence how a person learns. Because at the end of the day, this is a module on learning and development, so you should relate how culture is related to how a person will be able to learn in your definition of the term culture. Of course, marks will be given more on the use of examples. Real life examples in this case can actually award you more marks. Please also, when you are defining, for example, a term like a learning environment, what is a learning environment? Use the same skills I just mentioned here. How you are first of all define what it is to a learning environment, what is a learning environment, and explain how a learning environment can influence the learning process, how learners are influenced by their environment in which they are, in which they learn. Give examples from your own classrooms or your own schools. Unit 2. Unit 2 is about theories, features, and factors of pre-primary development domains. This unit deals with theories of learning. Study the theories and understand their contribution to the learning process. I understand that the theories we have here are actually a lot. I think this is the longest unit you have in your study guide, because it includes all the theories of learning. The theories of learning, as we know them, they are quite a lot, but you are required. Okay, for this, in this instance, I'll be very lenient and I'll tell you on what theory to concentrate on for this specific examination. Classical conditioning theory, which is our behavior risk theory. We know that the behavior risk theories are many, and the dominant one under the behavior risk theory is the classical conditioning and the operant conditioning. So if you are able to state what is classical conditioning and what is operant conditions, and from there you are able to differentiate when classical conditioning is used and when operant conditioning is used, how they are different from each other. That is what you are required to do for this specific unit in Unit 2. It says there that, for instance, the classical conditioning and the operant conditioning, both of them form part of the behavioral theories. Like I mentioned, you should be able to discuss their similarities, how they are similar, not only how they are different, but also how similar are they. For instance, we all know that they all fall under the umbrella of the behaviorist theory. But then, of course, within these behaviorist theories, there are differences. The operant conditioning, they have a way in which they differ from the operant conditioning. So please try to explain how these two theories are different, and explain how each of them contribute to the learning environment. What are their implications for the environment, for the learning environment? For example, we know that the operant conditioning by Skinner, they are more on rewarding behavior. So please try to explain how you as a teacher can use this issue of rewarding a learner or a child, how it contributes to the learning environment. So you are required to know more about these two conditioning, and you are able to explain them more. I think this is actually a 20-mark question. It's an essay of 20 marks. Please write your answers in essay format. When we say that, when you see the word differentiate, we don't require you to make a table and say operant is this and classical is that. You are actually required to actually write in an essay form, because first of all, you are defining what behaviorism is in general, and then you go on now to explain the classical conditioning. While you are explaining that, you also explain while operant conditioning is this, how similar they are. Your next paragraph can talk about their similarities. Given their similarity, the next paragraph you can talk about an example of their similarities. For example, both theories can happen in a classroom whereby this and this is happening, and then now you come to their differences, how different they are from each other. You are also required to give that difference in your essay, the 20-mark essay, because if you just write a table whereby you put operant condition here and classical condition there, when will you talk about their similarities, and when will you talk about their differences, and when will you define behaviorism in general if you are putting a table? So you are required to answer these questions in an essay format. The question papers have actually enough space for you to write your answer in essay format. This is a tertiary institution, and we require that students are able to write in essay format to express their views. And we don't require you to memorize the whole study guide. We require you to understand it and apply it in your own understanding using your own real life examples. And I can also discourage you from using the same examples that are used in the study guides. Try to, as much as possible, to use your own examples from your own classrooms. We want to know what you are doing in your own classrooms there. For those of you who are not yet in the classrooms, perhaps you are encouraged to use real life examples, because we are talking about children in this case. I'm sure you are able to use an example of a child in your explanations. It becomes very boring for me as a tutor to be marking what I've seen already in the study guide as the example. For example, the term zone of proximal development. Zone of proximal development. I would want to know what that is, and of course, not only do I want to know what it is, I want also to know examples of when it happens, how it happens, and why it happens. And you are answering the question. Ask yourself: have I answered what it is? Proximal zone of proximal development. What it is, when it happens, why it happens. That's what you must know about that. And then we move on to Unit 3, Childhood Diseases and Immunization. Here, I will ask you to evaluate. In evaluating, students are required to make judgments about the amount, the number, or value of something. Example, evaluate how to identify children in need of counseling. So in this, that's just a general example. In this case, for instance, questions where students are asked to evaluate the impact that HIV has on households, on the workforce, on education, and on the health sector of a country. We said you are able to make judgments on the amount of impact. How has HIV how much impact has HIV had on our household, in our own houses, in our own neighborhoods, in our families, in the workforce, at work? HIV, absenteeism, we know it's a big factor. We have people not coming to work, but they are still employed, and we can't replace them because they are still employed by the ministry or by the companies. But because of HIV and AIDS, they are unable to come to work. Such things are under the impact of the workforce. Education, the Ministry of Education, how has HIV and AIDS affected them? We know that, for example, the Ministry of Education is the biggest employer of civil servants in the country. How has HIV and AIDS affected the whole Ministry of Education? How is the education sector, the Ministry of Education, avails money to train teachers? Are these teachers able to come and give back to the communities? How has HIV and AIDS affected that? The health sector of the country? How much money does the Ministry of Health spend on ARVs for our people? That is HIV and AIDS impact. All those are the HIV and AIDS impact that we can discuss in this question. You can talk about the issue of orphans who are left to be taken care of by the government, by family members. Here you can also talk about the households that these orphans are often left in the care of the remaining or surviving family members. How does that impact the household? So in this case, you are required to actually give an essay. I'm just looking at the here. It's 20 marks. Use examples in your own communities. You are not required to give names of people that you know are affected by HIV and AIDS, because HIV and AIDS affects all of us. You are either affected or infected. So we are all affected, because it's our government that spends money on issues of ARVs and on issues of replacing colleagues that are not at work because of HIV. So it affects all of us. So give examples that are logical, that are related to the topic, and don't get personal when it comes to these examples. That's not what we expect from you. We just expect you to use examples from your own communities on the impact that HIV and AIDS has had. There isn't any community in this world that has not been affected by the whole issue of HIV and AIDS. But please try to relate it in these different sectors: households, the workforce, education in general, the health sector. Your study guides has a very good explanation on how HIV and AIDS has affected our community, our country, with regards to the labor force, with regards to education, for example, the extent to which schools and other education institutions are able to continue functioning well due to, or they are not able to function well due to the issue of HIV and AIDS. The impact it has on teachers, for example. Teachers are affected, they are infected by the issue of HIV and AIDS. How has that issue of illness and absenteeism from work and all that, death in families, affected the issues of teachers delivering their jobs well? On an individual environment, in a home environment, on income levels, you have two parents who are both employed, they are contributing the income in the household. You have a case whereby one of the parents is no longer there, the issue of income is reduced in the home. You will say that reduced income or households, this can force the family to actually experience difficulties in sustaining their basic necessities like food, for example, because of the issue of HIV and AIDS. And within the same topic of diseases and immunization, you should also, like I said, please use your own examples from your own communities. This will actually earn you more marks. Avoid copying. I will stress again that you should avoid copying the examples used in the study guides, but try to use your own examples from your own communities in your answers. Questions in this unit may also require you to differentiate between obesity and overweight. You should know what it is to be obese, and what it is to be overweight. So here again, you are required, please, to differentiate the two concepts. And of course, your own classrooms can have an example of such issues. You can use them in how it affects children who are overweight or those who are obese. Okay, that is unit 3. Now we got unit 4. The issue of self-concept. Self-concept issues as part of self-development. Understand the concept of self-concept and relate the reasons why teachers should ensure that learners learn how to develop positive self-concept. How learners learn how to develop self-concept. When you are asked a question like that, an essay question, and you are asked to answer this question, look at the marks allocated. I'm sure it's about 20 marks that you'll be. Let me just verify the marks I put for this question on self-concept. Give me a minute there. Yeah, it's 30 marks. No, it's 15 marks there. 50. Okay, on self-concept itself it's 15 marks. It's still, we know we do give you enough space for you to answer these essay questions. Self-concept, yes. Explain how teachers can help learners to develop positive self-concept. First of all, before you start saying that a teacher must do this to do this so that learners develop self-concept, you should actually state what it is that we mean by the term self-concept. Explain what the self-concept is, and then start explaining when someone has developed positive self-concept, when is it a positive self-concept, when does someone has a negative self-concept, self-concept and such things. And then you talk about how teachers can actually help learners to develop self-concept, and why should learners develop this positive self-concept. In other words, why is positive self-concept enough? I've marked papers in the past whereby if 15 mark questions, the students, they see the term self-concept, all they do there is just define for me the term positive self-concept. Now, have you explained, have you answered the question? You have not. Please try as much as possible to write answers that will actually enable you to score the whole marks, the overall marks asked in the question. If the question is 15 marks, there's no way you are going to score 15 marks by just giving a definition. And in this question, we are actually asking you to explain why it is important for teachers to ensure that learners in their classrooms develop self-concept. Why should my learners have a self-concept in my classroom? Tell me that answer to that question, not just to define the term self-concept. So this is very important, so please try as much as possible to answer the question as it is. You in this part also of self-concept, you can also relate issues of discipline and positive learning in learners, why learners need self-discipline, why learners need to develop positive learning in themselves. Also ask learners to relate between discipline itself and positive learning. It's important in this question also. Like I said, in overall this question will be out of 30 marks. In this unit of self-concept, you have 30 marks there. So if you take time and revise unit 4, you will be able to score marks there, because there are 30 marks required in that question. Learning aspects and learning. This should actually have been unit 5. It's an error there. This should be unit 5. This question, I think the questions I asked in unit 5 are only 20 marks. 2 questions of 20 marks. Okay. Learning aspect. This is not learning aspect. I'm sorry. This is the unit where learning aspects and learning theories. Okay? But it should be unit 5 there. So please, when you go back to your studies, just know that you are going to look at unit 5, whereby you are going to concentrate on the issues of the environment and the issues of inborn abilities. You know, the issue of nature and nature. Nature is what you are born with. In these studies, we talk about innate abilities. Innate as in INNATE, innate, inborn abilities. And the nature in this case can actually be the environment in which you are brought up. The debate of nature and nature. Nature is what you are born with, which is the environment, and nature is, excuse me, let me rephrase my statement again. Let me go back. Nature is what is your innate abilities, what you are born with, your inborn abilities, which is now your nature. And nature is actually the environment in which you are brought up in, the environment in which you are raised, the house, the community, your neighborhood in which you are raised as a person. How does that influence your learning abilities? This is the debate that most people, some scholars, some theorists, they believe that the environment in which you are brought up as a person is the one that actually plays the biggest role on how you learn and the kind of person you become, and all these things that you develop. That is the nature, and heredity, or what is that you are born with. Heredity, which is nature, is actually what you are, your inborn abilities, what you are born with, innate abilities. So please, here you are asked to discuss how both these things, the environment, which is the nature, and the heredity, which is the nature, how do these two things impact the learning process in human beings? How do they impact the way you learn? How does it impact the learning situations in your own classroom as teachers? So in this case, you are required to actually explain this debate. It's only a 10-mark questions, so you should be able to explain what the environment is in the learning process, and then what are the inborn abilities that the person is, and how do these two things affect? Do they all contribute 50% to the person's learning abilities, or do you think that the environment plays a bigger role than your inborn abilities, or do the inborn abilities play a bigger role than the environment? So discuss that. There's no true or wrong answer. It's all about your discussions and your arguments there. Give your own arguments, because even right now, most researchers, most scholars, they are still debating on the issue of nature and nature. They are still discussing whether the inborn abilities are the ones that play the biggest role in people learning, or it's the environment that plays the biggest role. So there is a question on that. And then the next question, which is now in unit 5, is the issue of language, the aspect of deep learning in terms of language. Vygotsky is one theorist who talks about language and learning and intelligence. So please try to understand what it means, that how does language affect deep learning? How does language affect deep learning? To what extent does language and learning, how do they interact? What impact does language learning have on the issue of a person's intelligence? Look at what Vygotsky says in that regard, and try to, as much as possible, to express your answer. And of course, the use of examples in that case is also as important as in all the questions that are asked in this module. I think there was a bit of some confusion in my explanation of nature and nature, but of course, I hope these slides will help you in preparing. Please, you understand that there will be a question on the environment and on heredity. The environment being nature. Let me just clarify that mistake again. The environment is the nature, and heredity, or our inborn abilities, is the nature. So, or nature, whatever, however you might explain, define it or pronounce it. That is heredity. Our what we inherit from our parents. That's our inborn abilities. There will be a question on that, so there will be a debate on that. So concentrate on it. Basically, this is all for the examination. I'll just give you the general remarks that is required as per each module that you might be writing, not only for this module. It is important that students try as much as possible to answer each and every question in the question paper. I think I stressed that already in the first unit. I said, please try as much as possible to answer the questions. You can see that most of these questions, actually, if you have not done them in your assignments, you might have come across them in some past question papers. Try to answer them, please. All the questions that are asked here are based on your study guides, and I just gave you a guideline on which units in the study guide to concentrate on. Try as much as possible to go back to those units and try to prepare yourself well for the examination. As a student, it is required that you try to write as clearly as possible for the sake of making your work more clearer, and also to help your tutor to actually mark your scripts more accurately. We all want accuracy in our marking, so try as much as possible to be clear with your explanations, even with your examples. Try to use academic language. Don't use the issue of slangs and words that are not academic in your writing. It will actually make you lose marks. Real life examples and elaborations are required, and they should please be clear, and as much as possible try to relate them to the learning environment. Try as much as possible to read and understand each and every question before you start answering the question. If you find yourself that you are in the middle of answering a question and you are somehow lost in what you are saying, go back to the question again, read the question, and ask yourself, am I still answering the question or am I out of the topic? Try as much as possible to answer the required question. That is all for this module, and I wish you all the best for your examinations, and I look forward to marking your script.